television.
Oh, man. Hi there, my name is Lily Green.
And I'm Darcy Lewis, and this is
The Politics Hydra.
Here at this podcast, we see similarities between Heracles' trials and the American political complex. When you attempt to unpack one issue, two more grow in its place. And since Heracles was busy, you've got us.
We slay this Hydra not for glory, but for the sake of exploration and further academic inquiry. Here we believe American politics are complex, multifaceted, and worth exploring. Throughout this multi-part series, we will attempt to identify, define, dissect, and discuss facets of American politics that we find pressing and current.
Where ignorance and danger abounds, we venture to places untouched by the shining ray of knowledge. Fear no longer, for we, your knights, will slay this Hydra today in the name of academic advancement.
Yay! We have a special guest today, Dr. Schultz.
Yay!
Hello.
Welcome to the
Welcome.
Politics Hydra.
Thank you for having me.
So we're gonna act like she's not the whole reason we're here. Dr. Schultz of Dr. Schultz fame, we have referred to her many times in the podcast.
Top prof, Dr. Schultz.
Top prof, double top prof, Dr. Schultz.
Today's episode is called Media Mayhem, Political Representation in Media. And we're just to kind of give you guys a little bit of an outline, we're going to talk about representation in film, in TV, news, and we're going to go into some examples of movie examples, TV examples, and then we're going to get into kind of a broader conversation about how politics align with representation and specifically how media representation plays a role in that. But to start off, as the resident couch potato here, I watch a lot of TV, and I know we don't really talk about it a lot because I don't feel like you two...
I watch a ton of TV, and I love it, and I don't trust people who don't.
Really?
Sorry, Darcy.
Looking like we don't trust me. Yeah, I don't watch much TV. I mean, I have to take into account that we live in a society. No, have to take into account.
No. Let's leave the Leto.
But you watch some TV.
I watch some,
Yeah,
but like
so that's okay.
I don't know how much that counts when.
She's a weeb.
Listen here.
Just audience at home. She's a weeb.
Jeez, that's so
Do you know what that means?
No.
short for weeb. It's supposed to be someone that's super too much into Japanese culture and anime.
Anime.
A weeb?
A
Yeah.
weeb.
Weeb.
Yeah.
Like a weeble.
Like a weeaboo.
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 Yeah.
Yeah, it's derogatory. She's just avoiding calling me a slur at this point.
Excuse you.
Oh, we're
Excuse you.
off to a
No.
good start. No, I just meant to say, people who say, oh, I don't watch television,
Right.
but they tell you that before you've even said anything.
Right.
Okay.
Like they want you to know that about them before we even.
I am
yes.
superior due to my lack of
Yes, exactly.
You know, like
Those
Meghan
were-
Markle and who's she married to?
Jesus. All right, Prince Harry.
Prince Harry.
Or no, is he deposed?
I don't care.
Just Harry.
You think you would know after the last episode, but never mind.
We don't talk about the last episode because last time we talked about a prime minister, they got removed. So keep going.
Anyway, no. So Meghan Markle did an interview where she was talking about TV that they watch, and she started out going, "We don't really watch a lot of TV, but when we do, we watch this one very specific cop show." And I just went,
That's interesting.
I was just like, what an odd.
Like a British cop show or like an
That's
American
like
cop show?
somebody saying I listen to Kendrick Lamar and somebody going, "Oh, well, I only listen to classical." Like it gave me that vibe. You know what I mean? No one's actually listening
Kendrick
to
Lamar
classical.
is classical.
Oh, excuse me. Okay, but you watch all of us watch TV in different kind of genres, I'd say, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm,
Like-
definitely.
Specifically, right now, well, oh, so sad, but House of Dragon is over. House of Dragon was, y'all have heard me talk about it, was this kind of play off of Game of Thrones. So good. It's over. I also listened to the H3 podcast. I don't expect either of y'all to understand that. My grandfather calls
Okay. All right.
My grandfather calls it crap, actually. I listen to about 12 hours of that podcast a week because it's a lot.
When are you doing your homework?
That's the thing. I listen to H3 getting dressed, in the shower, going to bed, like doing homework, walking to Dr. Schultz's class right after, like all the time. And it's not anything useful or anything like that. But so what do y'all watch? I know that you're a weeb.
All right. Jeez. Yeah.
A weeble.
A weeble.
A weeble.
Yeah. I will ruin your crops.
Okay.
like a
Go ahead.
weeble. Okay. Anyways, yeah, it's a majority anime. It's Asian dramas. I avoid American dramas because they don't hit the spot at all. Like I am one of those people that will wait 12 episodes for the main characters to hold hands. So like, you're not getting that with a lot of American shows. And if anything, like if I have to watch real people shows, it's mostly like fantasy stuff. Like I like The Witcher and all that kind of stuff.
I didn't know you watched The Witcher.
I love The Witcher.
We could dork out to The Witcher.
Did you hear that they're replacing Henry Cavill with one of the
No, you mean like replacing his entire
replacing?
I'm not watching.
Oh, what's Liam, the dude from Hunger Games that has the brothers?
Liam Hemsworth.
Hemsworth, yeah.
Ew.
Yeah.
Why?
They didn't say why, but he said he's stepping down for the next season.
Fine.
He's so pretty.
Okay. Well, I didn't know you watched The Witcher. But there's also another show you were talking about. What is it? It's like really sweet and about talking animals or something.
Oh, yeah. Bee and Puppy Cat. So it's like this robot girl that lives on an island, and like there's a little cat that falls from the sky after she asks for it. And the cat talks, but it's only in like Vocaloids. Mm-hmm. And so like it's just making little noises, but she understands it. And so it's like a lot of intergalactic and soft lo-fi kind of deal. It's very nice.
Well, good. Dr. Schultz, what do you like to watch?
I kind of vacillate between, well, I watch Dateline just about every night.
Right.
Yeah. And I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts. But yeah, I kind of, if I'm actually watching something because I'm sick or grading, yeah, I need a palate cleanser. Right. I actually like those. I call them like WB type shows.
WB.
Yeah, this is probably too old of a Buffy the Vampire Slayer kind of stuff, except like update. Like I'll actually watch those. Can I say teeny bopper?
Sure, yeah.
Like reboots?
No, like oh my gosh, I'm trying to think. Okay, I can't even remember it right now, of course, because I'm on the spot. But yeah, it's like teenage dramas.
I can't. Yeah. Like ever since I've gotten to like kind of adult phase, I can't watch anything with teenagers in it because it's just too cringy for me.
Sabrina
and Teenage Witch.
Yeah, Sabrina, that kind of stuff. And I know it's kind of junky, but yeah, every once in a while, especially when I'm grading.
Right.
It appeals to me, but mostly Dateline. A lot of Dateline. I'll even rewatch Dateline. Yeah, in 2020.
I watch shows like The Handmaid's Tale and House of Dragons, things that are sometimes really heavy, but then I pair that with something like the H3 podcast, which just has like no value to anybody ever. And I think sometimes I get really tired of watching, like The Handmaid's Tale is really heavy right now. It's really, really heavy. And, that's why Darcy was like, hey, you want to watch this show about, what was it called again?
Bee and Puppy Cat.
Bee and Puppy Cat, because I'm spending too much time going,
but
oh my
you read The
gosh,
Handmaid's
Lindsey
Tale?
Graham is going to be the end of the world. You know what I mean? Like making comparisons to like the commanders in Handmaid's Tale and Ted Cruz. You know, like that's not
parallels between
escape.
fiction and reality.
Yeah, sometimes I wish I was watching a little bit more. On that note, how much time do you guys think you spend analyzing the content that you're watching? And by that I mean like taking the show out of the context of the show and analyzing it as a piece of work and the role it plays in society or in film as itself.
Okay, well, look, Dateline, sorry. I mean, like, I wouldn't say it's like analysis in any sort of like, oh, this is what it says about society, because I'm already convinced that, all things bad. But the whole time, I prefer to watch it with somebody because I'll just be analyzing it the whole time. And so I think that's why I like it. But it's usually kind of snarky comments and lots of comments about what people are wearing. So maybe that's not really what you mean.
No, that's
an analysis. Yeah.
Yeah.
I am the worst person to watch anything with because like if I'm by myself, I'm silently taking in things, but I will catch foreshadowing. I will talk if the historical costumes don't match up with the actual time. Right. One of the things I'll do is like my YouTube subscription is mostly like people that do like analysis on different like media types. Like my most recent one is about like video games and like how they connect to different philosophical ideas and stuff. I don't play video games. I have never played any of these video games. I just like listening to analysis.
Which one are you listening to right now?
I don't know his name. It's like Jason something. But like he talks a lot about like
What game?
the game. It's a bunch of them. Like the Red
Dead Redemption?
Yeah, and then Cyberpunk, and then there's like a bunch of different ones, and they'll do like little obscure ones that talk about like the nature of pain and how it does such and such, or how our fear of depths or fear of being alone and all these kinds of different things are being conveyed through video games.
You ever play Undertale?
I've watched people play Undertale.
Yeah. Did you like it?
I did.
Yeah. You ever heard of Undertale? Or like
I
any of
haven't
those?
heard of any of these things. You're speaking another language. Yeah.
Have you ever, like, do you play video games?
No. I'm actually trying to think. Cause
Phone games count.
Huh?
Phone games count.
No, they
No, I
don't.
definitely
Yes,
don't play
they
phone games.
absolutely do.
Okay, what are you, a Flappy Bird enthusiast?
No.
Okay.
I'm just saying that whenever you take out the market of mobile games, you take out a large majority of demographic that is majority female.
Anyway.
Yeah, I got one of those Nintendo things with with the older games,
Yeah.
but I just get really frustrated, and boyfriend, the imaginary boyfriend who doesn't have a name. Yeah, I think he gets frustrated because I need him there to help explain how to move the character, and it's just me walking into a wall for like 5 minutes. I'm like, I don't understand. He's like, you need to go open that door now, go do that, and I'm like, no, I think I'll take a meander. So yeah, we have it, but I think it's just frustrating. He gets frustrated with me because I just want to take walks. I don't want to kill anyone.
Right.
Yeah.
I just just want to see what's going on.
Animal
So
Crossing might
basically,
be
no.
a good game for her.
I don't think I want to play any games.
Really?
Yeah.
Takes up a lot of time, I guess.
does.
Yeah, and I think also just because I spend so much time on TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all my eyes can handle.
Well, the reason we talk up
Beautiful.
Thank you. The reason I bring up whether or not we're analyzing the shows that we're watching is because representation is really important. And in the shows that we're spending a lot of time watching, it's important to talk about the people who are involved, the messages that are being portrayed, and whether or not there are things that are missing from that type of media that maybe should be there in terms of representation. So before we get started, we have a little bit of a game.
Yay.
Okay? So here's the rules. I'm going to give you a certain depiction of a form of diverse representation in media. You both will then tell me an example of this representation, the first one that comes to mind when I say blank, first example that you think of, and then tell me when you believe the first time this identity representation was shown in media. Make sense?
Yeah.
Check. Okay.
Okay. First one. First interracial kiss.
Oh no. I think you all biased me though.
Why?
How?
Well, because I can't think of anything else now because the last conversation we had was about Friends. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So that's not the first, but it's just in my head.
The first one you think
Yeah,
of?
the supermodel, like the one, black person on the show. And of course, she's a supermodel. And yeah, there were 6 other people. But remember? And it's her and Ross. And I know that's not the first.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's all I can think of.
Okay. What
Yeah.
about you, Darcy?
I'm thinking Star Trek.
Oh.
Because
yeah.
Kurt and I can't remember what her name was, but it was a black woman and Captain Kurt, and they were on a planet together and they smooched.
So when do y'all think the first, when was the first interracial kiss shown?
Okay.
On
so
an American network television.
if
Let me
Loving
explain that.
versus Virginia.
I just show off. Let me just rattle off some Supreme Court decisions.
Go for it, but do know you
Must,
are coming on my turf.
Must have an interracial kiss.
65.
64.
64. All right. Well, I would be. The first black and white kiss on American network television is often credited to the Star Trek episode Plato's Stepchildren, which first aired on November 22nd, 1968.
Done.
Oh.
I'm closer, though.
Y'all were pretty close. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
You cheated. You looked at the sheet
I
beforehand.
didn't cheat. I just gave her the idea.
That is true. Well, she doesn't know this next one for sure.
Okay.
All right. First, homosexual relationship.
Dude, you stole my car. Dude, who stole my car?
What? What? Is that a movie reference?
Yes.
I don't know it.
You got it. Film
gotta
again.
explain.
I think Keanu Reeves was in it.
Keanu Reeves.
Maybe. Or Ashton Kutcher. They look about the same.
That's the first one you think of?
Just now.
Okay, no, I was just asking if you thought that was the first homosexual relationship on TV with Keanu Reeves, or...
They had a kissing scene. That's all I remember. Dude, who stole my car? You stole my car? Who stole my car? 19-something, 90-something? Oh, no. Yeah, I don't
me
know.
see if I
Can you look it
find
up?
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, your turn, Darcy.
Oh goodness.
Wait.
I'm
for-
mad blanking right now.
For editing purposes, just let me find it.
Mm.
Dude, you stole my car?
Who stole my car?
Dude, who stole my car?
This just might be something I made up. Sometimes I say things, and it's good, to credit somebody else. Then I feel bad, though, if it's something smart that I said, and I give somebody else credit, because I'm kind of just being like, as a famous blah, 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 and then I say what I want to say. Yeah.
Is this from John Wick? The thing that popped up was, you stole my car, and you killed my dog from the John Wick movie.
That was
Is
the
that the
best
John
movie.
It was a very good movie.
So
haven't
many
seen it.
people died.
Oh
His
my
wife
gosh.
died, and he didn't care about anything until the dog died. But no,
That's
that was
not the one?
Okay.
I can't find it.
No.
Wife dies, and the wife, he's like having his sad dead wife
gotta be
moment,
Ashton
and
Kutcher.
he's like watching videos of like her smiling on the beach and stuff, and then she sends a dog to the house, and she's like, take care of this now since I can't be there for you. And some freaking Russian dude's coming to his house after saying he wouldn't sell his
Yes.
car, and then kills his dog and beats him up in his house.
That was the worst thing ever.
It just happens that this dude has to be a mercenary that went into retirement for the love of his wife, and now they've killed, the wife's dead and the dog's dead, and now he's gonna mess up the underworld.
Great, so I don't have to watch the movie anymore.
No, you still have to watch it.
Okay. Is it called Dude, Where's My Car?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, with Ashton Kutcher.
Okay, same person.
Okay, all right.
Are they smooching?
Well, no, but this picture would imply that they do.
That's all
I think that's just dudes being bros.
I think they kissed.
I believe it. Okay, all right. So,
yeah, I'll do it.
what about you?
I have no idea. I have no idea for a reference.
Oh no, does
this-
porn count?
I was about to say.
No.
I was about
Okay.
to say. I don't think. I couldn't think of anything, but that was all right. Well, that's kind of bad that we're thinking automatically that. All right. Anyways, I'll say the 70s. I can't think of anything.
You can't think
72.
of an example of
70s is
homosexual
all
relationship?
porn. Like it's just all porn,
of it's porn.
basically. Yeah.
Well, I'll say that Disney is accredited with the first gay character
I was
ever
about to say, yeah.
in like life.
Well, okay. Different from Others is a silent picture from 1919 that is widely considered the first feature film about gay love.
Just 70s movies are just. They just seem to have a lot of nudity and just
Yeah.
weirdness.
Yeah,
and-
because
That
you're
is
getting
true.
out of the free love period kind of deal.
yeah,
So
disco. Oh, sad times.
Okay. First depiction of a black president.
Deep Impact.
deep impact.
Okay,
Morgan Freeman.
yeah, okay.
Nope. I was about to say Scandal, but that was not a black president. Very much a white president. Sorry.
Doesn't have to be say the first. It's just the first one that pops. Just
I can't think
a
of
black president. A other in a film.
Darcy doesn't see color.
Darcy, we
She's
know how the
bringing up my
colorblind model
colorblind
is.
that I can't see color. I've never seen purple. 57.
Okay,
Deep Impact.
that was
I
the
don't
first
know
time
that
you think.
No. I'm going to say 70 something.
Okay, the first movie portrayal of a black American president was that of Sammy Davis Jr. in the 1933 film Rufus Jones for President. In the short musical comedy, the 7-year-old Davis
Musical
is
comedy.
told by his mother, portrayed by Ethel Waters, that anyone can become president, and later dreams of his own inauguration.
Oh,
So-
nice.
So did he, or was it a dream?
So technically it was a dream.
That doesn't count.
Well,
It's the first depiction in film of a black person being
Oh.
able to be president.
In a dream.
In a dream. That's actually a fair critique.
yeah.
If you dream hard enough
It could happen.
in a dream,
Yeah, that's not how it works.
So, why are we talking about the representation of identities in media? Well, let's start off by defining and discussing SIT, also known as social
SIT, social
identity theory. All right. First coined by an essay in 1986, it explains that collective identities are formed by an individual membership to a specific group. If individual identities are formed by their membership to a certain group, whether that is their racial identity, gender, or sexual identity, then the portrayal of said group in media is especially important. Research shows that negative portrayal of individual social identity can cause them to distance themselves from said group, leading to negative stereotypes and depictions of a group even to non-members. And that is from yet another study that was conducted in 2019. With that being said, how identity groups are portrayed or the lack of said portrayal can negatively impact society's view of said group.
Is this a communications theory?
I think it's been used in multiple things. I heard about it in a psychology class, an IB psychology class in high school. I've seen it in sociology. But yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it's like group consciousness stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So, in this episode, if you haven't caught on already, we will be discussing media's representation or lack of representation of specific groups, and then opening up a discussion on how representation matters not only in media, but also in the political world as well.
Hooray.
Woohoo!
Yay! So the following sections are meant to spark a dialogue about various issues pertaining to identity-related representation in media. So let's start out with some facts about the state of racial representation in film specifically. Now I'm going to just throw some stats at you and then we're going to discuss them, okay?
All right.
So in a study conducted by McKinsey & Company, they found that in films from 2015 to 2019 for on-screen talent for a lead or co-lead position, only 11% of people were Black or African American, while all others were 89% of the population. For supporting cast, the Black identified individuals made up 14%, and all others were 86%. And in this specific study, they compare that to the population of Black individuals in the U.S., just stating that that is about comparable to about 13%. Mm-hmm. But when you talk about off-screen talent, that's where there's a big issue here. When it comes to directors, only 6% of directors are Black. And for producers, only 6%. For writers, only 4%. So they also found that in films with a Black producer, which is only 8%, or a Black director, they are significantly more likely to have a Black writer. So if your head lead is of a Black identity, they're more likely to hire more Black people for off-screen talent. Mm-hmm. The same study mentions a study that Netflix commissioned where they found that Netflix actually tends to be more diverse in their films, which was crazy to me because when I think of Netflix movies, I only think of white women.
Really?
Yeah. I guess that's maybe because I think of, like, 13 Reasons Why and, like...
Yeah, well, you got to take into account the algorithm, too, because, like...
Oh, are you saying that I only watch films with white people in them?
Well,
yeah.
Like Game of Thrones, I thought only white people watch that.
No. I mean, I don't know,
Well,
but...
I don't watch it for the creepy bits.
What creepy bits?
The weird stuff in it.
Well, there's a lot of...
There's a lot of
incest,
rape, murder, torture.
I'm cool with the last two, but, like, I draw the line.
Child masturbation.
What?
Yeah.
What are you...
Yeah.
So we are talking about porn. Okay, got it.
Well,
essentially, yeah.
This is the second time we brought up porn, but one of the articles I read when we were putting together our research, I was mostly in charge of, like, getting, like, the race conscious and colorblind rhetoric kind of stuff. And running across that, I saw something about, like, racial narrative and racial grammar, and it talked about how porn is kind of the best way to gauge racial, like, how far we've got racially, and, like, ultimately because it's, like, unchecked, you're not talking about it with other people, you're just observing it and keep going, and then you have to take into account that there's, like, a bunch of stereotypes that are just being perpetuated in it constantly, and nothing's getting checked because no one's talking about it.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I don't know anything about those studies, but that's really compelling. I was just gonna say though, as far as I also, sorry to, like, switch gears because I like
Go.
I like porn talk. No, but I was just thinking that in political science, there's quite a lot of studies that have shown that one of the benefits of having more political representatives of disenfranchised, previously disenfranchised groups is, you tend to see more people in, like, say, city government being hired. More staff members are going to be, of that group as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's a similar pattern that you see in politics as well.
And it's just interesting, that algorithm idea, because even if Netflix is more diverse, it's actually not that much more diverse. Black individuals made up only about 15.2% of any lead or co-lead roles across film and scripted series for a 2-year period from 2018 to 2019. And so that is significantly more than what they found in the other study, which was only 11. But still, when you're talking about, like, wanting more representation, if only 15% of the leads on all of the shows that Netflix are making are Black, that means a lot of the shows that you're watching don't have Black representation as leads. And Cole and I, my partner and I, when we were talking about this film, we're thinking about, like, the shows that Netflix makes a lot of money off of. And personally, the ones I thought of didn't have Black representation in them. So it's like they might be in those films, but they're not in the films that are making the most money, getting the most eyes on them. Does that make sense? So it's kind of like that 15% has less weight and less of an impact.
I was going to push back on you because I was thinking, oh, well, if you have 13% population, what are we talking about with representation? But that actually makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Because then people are self-selecting, and, people are watching shows where, okay, I get what you're saying.
If you look at my Netflix account compared to, like, my parents', it's super different because, of course, we watch different stuff. But, like, I'll see the little, like, the ones they'll suggest to them, and it's, like, way more Black kind of stories and stuff, but I'm not getting those same.
You're getting anime.
I'm getting
puppies,
anime.
Big eyes, and
correct.
Yeah.
No.
But see, aren't we talking about descriptive? I'm so sorry.
Go.
But descriptive and substantive representation here, because to me, I'm really glad that you brought up the writers, directors, and producers, because to me, that's so much more important. Quite honestly, in terms of, yes, what you see on screen, what you see in political representatives is really important. But to me, the story, the narrative, the perspective that diverse writers and diverse producers can bring is so much more powerful. Again, I'm so sorry. This is the only reference I can think of because I've only talked to you two about this. But I still remember 30 Rock being one of my favorite shows back in the day. I just kind of stopped watching it. And I'm really bad with names. I barely knew who Tina Fey was. But I knew who Tracy Morgan was, because of SNL. And that one skit where he plays, the Safari Planet. Okay, I don't need to do the dance because nobody can see me. But when I found out that she was the writer, that made so much sense. Not because of her, I'm not that, but there's something about it. I don't know if there's, like, women's humor or anything like that.
Didn't she write Mean Girls too?
I think so.
She wrote Mean Girls.
And that was so good. Yeah, and so it's like it doesn't have to be about women necessarily, but just having these diverse voices, you tend to get more of a, in Tina Fey's case, more of a woman's voice, a woman's perspective, but also it's just different kind of humor that you wouldn't, and I never was able to put my finger on why that show is so good, and it's just because I've never heard any, like, up until then, because I'm not a communication scholar, which is, again, why I was really nervous about this, this particular podcast, because I can't appropriately express myself here. But yeah, there's something about 30 Rock that was just so inherently different than other comedies I've seen, beyond just, like, the female representation, because there was quite a lot of female, I don't know if you call them leads, but definitely female lead roles. So
it makes me think of the discussion we had a couple weeks ago about Jordan Peele and his horror movies, and that transition from comedy into this, because he is not only a face, right? He was a comedic writer, but now he's also a producer, and he's off screen now, and that's kind of transitioned. And so I personally, there's a lot of debate surrounding his horror films. People say that they're not, I have to think about what I'm watching. It's not a horror movie anymore. There's more going on. But I would argue that it adds something to the horror ideal. Like, that's kind of the idea, is to in my opinion, as a white person watching these films, it makes you have to kind of think about things that make you uncomfortable and then put it in the genre of horror, and it makes it way worse. You get like,
but see, I disagree with that though,
Really?
because and I know that I'm a lone voice in this one because
going.
and I'm always going to lose the argument because, and I'm not even going to say, oh, it's not about race. Of course it is, and that's what but to me, because I love horror so much, I get bored easily because I just consume everything I can. I'm done with the gore stuff. I just past that. I don't know. I feel like, I don't like that kind of horror. I like. Yeah,
I'm more of a
thriller.
psychological horror
Yeah,
kind of
for
person.
sure. The less gore, the better.
Yeah.
Actually, it means they put some thought in it, and it's not
Exactly.
like, So for me, his work is just so, again, markedly different than anything I've seen before, and so that's what I liked about it. And of course, race is important, but it's like it's not just that for me. It was just like, it's different. I could rewatch those movies.
I get that some people like aren't. I mean, if you don't want to think, that's on you. But like,
I don't.
it's like it is about race. It's about further valuing of like an actual black voice, and because like I feel like watching Peele's works as an African American person, I'm kind of in the in. So like people that are saying like, oh, this isn't horror, they're not. The horror industry has been built around what white people think is scary. And so like by actually paying attention to like combining actual real life reality and like fears and anxieties of actual black people and putting that with classical horror elements, it's actually curated for us,
Okay, so in that one scene, what's the name of the movie? The first one. That was so
Get
good.
Out?
Yeah, Get Out. So I'm so glad that you're saying that because what makes horror movies great, right, is if you can kind of identify with the characters. If you're like, oh no, what would I do? I'm scared. They're in this situation. And you can't help but feel, like you're feeling the guy's trepidation about going to this town. And even though his crazy girlfriend, we find out later she's crazy, but we're ruining so many movies. But
No,
like,
it's fine. It's
people should
Spoiler
that was in
alert for the rest of the episode.
2015.
Yeah, but like when he arrives at the house and meets the family,
Something
as a white person, like it was, you still like the horror element was there. You're absolutely right.
But some people didn't see the horror in that.
Really?
Like I've talked to people about it because like that came out while I was still in high school, and I went to school in. I mean, you grew up in Alabama, but I went to school in Little Rock, Arkansas, with the IB kids, a bunch of white privileged kids, and we went to watch these movies.
I
forgot. Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, having discussions about this, people like didn't get the point. They left that movie like just thinking that he got stuck in this house with these crazy people. Like they didn't understand any of the type of like racial nuances that movie presented, which like was mind-boggling to me.
It had all these little moments that make your skin prickle. Because like first and foremost, the setting. Did y'all know? I told Lily about this, but like it was filmed in Alabama. Like in Mobile and Fairhope. I'm very tempted to drag Lily there.
I'm down.
And just going there. I'm 110%.
That's where
it's someone's
the field
house.
trip should go.
I think that's what the field trip could be. But like that was here. And so like being Southern and seeing these kind of like, okay, white girlfriend being in the middle of the woods, police officer wants to see your ID. She's like, no. And like the moment when the parents are like trying to make him feel at ease, where he's like, well, we would have voted for Obama a second time, a third time. That makes your skin prickle as a black person because you've had those kinds of experiences of feeling just uncomfortable. Like it's just this uncomfortable surrounding of whiteness where you don't feel like you see anyone else like you. It's a movie about isolation, really. And it's about the commodifying of black bodies in general.
I'm thinking too that it has a lot to do with the people, at your school, Lily. Maybe it's just being so used to understanding everything, so the idea of, because as much as when I was watching it that I liked, again, horror fan. I could get with it. I could identify with that element of being scared. And I don't understand how you wouldn't be, but at the same time, there were so many references that, and I'm trying to think of, I think it was Fruit Loops.
The Fruit Loops.
Yeah, like that I didn't get, as a white person, where I really enjoyed the fact that I got to have conversations about a movie that I love. I don't know. I love analyzing movies that, I actually care about. That's an exception. Usually I don't. Dateline, I'm just like making fun of the people, which sounds awful, I know. But with that, there were certainly so many parts of the movie where it was really cool to find out afterwards, because I completely missed it.
It's packed with symbolism.
Yeah.
Like the way the character is able to overcome his situation is by like commodifying pieces of slavery and of white privilege. So like stuffing cotton in your ears to be able to block out the hypnosis, using a bocce ball hook to actually vanquish his white oppressors, taking a buck, which is what's it called? The buck head, deer head.
Yeah.
What's it called? Mount a.
This is the wrong audience for us to explain to you what it's called to mount
the stuffed
carcass.
heads.
The stuffed heads.
Taxidermy.
We'll go with taxidermy. Yeah. But like using the taxidermy buck as like a trophy object, the same way that his body is being commodified as a trophy object, and using that to get out of there.
Yeah.
I love this movie.
I do too, and that's why I brought it up, is because for me, watching the movie, I'm feeling uncomfortable, but I didn't understand why I felt uncomfortable. I hadn't had those conversations. We didn't talk about race in my house, and it wasn't because, like, my mom's best friend, like, my best friends were African American, but I never had these discussions. And I've kind of spent some time trying to figure out maybe why that is. But watching that movie, I knew I didn't understand all that symbolism, but I knew I was uncomfortable, and it had me leave the theater and go, I have to go and learn about what this meant. And for me, it was a learning opportunity, and it was a avenue for education that I actually enjoyed. It was a horror movie, you know what I mean, that made me go home and think. And then I got to tell Cole and my friends about, like, did you know that the Fruit Loops mean this and all this crazy stuff, you know what I mean? But you learn a lot in the process. But there's been a lot of dialogue surrounding not only his film, but also his casting choices. Mm-hmm. Because he has, and I don't have the quote in front of me, but has said, my movies are from a black experience, a black perspective, so my actors are going to be black because that's who they're representing. And there's been people like, well, that's racist. You're not, not
the
hiring.
The old Toni Morrison conversation.
Exactly. And so it's just about, he's like, well, the story is about them. Why would I cast anybody else to tell those stories? And then when he does cast white people, they're playing a specific role, but that's because the black people are also playing a role in that movie. And so, their experience. And there's also been discussion about his, like, off-screen casting as well, and how he's been hiring black writers and black producers to do that. And I just haven't, I guess maybe because all three of us at this table have had kind of a nuanced conversation about those movies before, that I just don't understand the argument. But people are saying, why are there not more white writers in these movies? Like, it's wrong for him to not be doing. I'm just like, y'all have missed the point, like, right over the head. Yeah, exactly. But have you heard about the off-screen talent casting of his?
Well, I was kind of under the assumption that it's a majority POC people, because, like, you can't create works like he has without having the input of actual people that experience it. Because, like, the reason, so I know where you're going with this. So, like, the reason we are saying that, so the kind of, like, want for white voices in these stories about POC people, it's kind of working under the assumption that, like, y'all have been doing a good job with handling our stories so far, which has not been the truth all the time. And, like, it's just an opportunity to be able to actually hear stories that we want to hear. I've talked to y'all about how I'm really tired of, like, what's it called? Tragedy porn movies, where it's like, I'm not watching another slave movie. I'm not watching another, like, any of that. Like, I don't care how many explosions are in it. It's just, I want to be able to see films and movies and content that are based off of more conflict than just being black. Because obviously there's things that come with that, but like there are lots of settings where that can be utilized, you know?
And this conversation actually leads perfectly into this next section where we're going to be talking about some controversy that is surrounding some casting of African-American characters in well-known like movie and story tropes. So most recently, the casting of how does she pronounce her name?
Halle.
Halle
Halle
I thought it was
Berry?
Halle. I
No.
thought it was
Berry?
Halle Berry for the
No,
yeah. I
that's-
messed that up
yeah.
because I was just like, "Hey class, did y'all know that Halle Berry's gonna be Little Mermaid?" So she been
It's
old.
like, dang, she already got to play Storm.
No,
Oh,
Halle
that's
Bailey as Ariel in the Little Mermaid has been met with a lot of mixed reactions. So first off, did either of you grow up watching The Little Mermaid?
I mean, yeah, I watch Disney movies.
Yeah.
Mulan's my favorite, though.
Mulan is a good one.
I know all the songs still. I'm pretty sure I know all the.
You know, I know all the songs too, but it's for a different reason.
It's because
Fun
you're a
fact-
nerd.
Fun fact, I was actually in my high school's adaptation of The Little Mermaid and was casted to play one of Ariel's sisters.
I would have casted you as the kelp.
I thought she was gonna say she was Ariel because of the hair, and that's
No,
where we
that's
were
not
going
her
with
hair
this.
color.
No. Well, no. I'm a blonde.
What?
Yeah, no, yeah. More like a brunette, actually. I think I say I'm a blonde because I'm not comfortable with the fact that I am a brunette. But, yeah, I'm a brunette, but I dye it red.
Mind blown.
Yeah. Well, this is me in my... Yeah, here, you can take it. Yeah, so I was casted to play one of Ariel's sister. Thank you. Fun fact, the director hated me. I mean, hated me.
What did you do?
Well, because originally, when I moved to Little Rock, I joined the...
Wait, which one's you?
The purple. Joined the cast and crew. And for the audience at home, Dr. Schultz is rather taken aback.
You have different hair.
I'm actually a natural blonde.
Yeah.
I just dye it black.
Do you? Yeah, so
I've been told I've
she really
blonde
didn't
my
like
whole
me
life.
because I did forensics, and actually, as soon as I got there, my mom actually did a bunch of theater when she was younger, and I learned how to do hair, and I did pageants and stuff too, so I learned how to do those things. And so she casted me as I can't even remember the term anymore, but I was in charge of hair for my high school's hairspray production. So I kind of was like a big
Dang.
deal. And then, living out my glory days. But then I was like, I hate this. I don't want to do forensics anymore. I'm going to go do debate. And then I went to state championships and stuff like that and was doing really well. And she hated me for that because she didn't like that. So she would send her forensic students to stalk me. And they would screenshot my social media accounts because they were trying to find me doing something wrong so that I would lose my position. And in fact, at the time, getting a little personal, I had really big boobs. I had huge boobs, and I actually got a breast reduction surgery. And so after that, but she would change the shells on my costume every single show so that they would be in a different position every time so that my bra wouldn't work. So I'd be on stage and they would be falling out.
Get the the super big shells in.
She purposely bought an ill-fitting wig that looked really bad. And so what I'm going to show you now is that looks cute. But this is what I actually look like in my full costume in the purple. And she let a freshman do my makeup.
You look like if someone got extremely drunk and tried to construct Dolly Parton with their eyes closed.
So people are mad. And so there's a TikTok trend going around with the hashtag that says Black Ariel, where mothers of young children are recording their children's reactions to seeing Ariel portrayed as a black woman. And it's not just specifically black moms and black children. There's sometimes white children as well. I think that kind of came about as a reaction to all the publicity that these black children's reactions were getting on social media. And so these white moms were like, let me show you my kids' reactions. And it was just kind of a way of showing that kids didn't, the white kids were like, oh, cool, it's just Ariel. And the black kids were like, oh my gosh, Mom, Ariel's black. And it was my mom sent me a video. She said, oh my gosh, I'm sobbing. My white mother was like, this is so sweet.
In
I can't
opposition
believe
to your
this."
black mother.
What do you, oh yeah, anyway. I don't even know how to respond to that one. So that's the scenario. Most reactions were sweet, but others were not so happy, claiming they were claiming that Ariel was supposed to be white. This was a big deal. News media, like traditional news media, picked it up and they were talking about it. And by the way, like Halle Bailey is like a Grammy-winning recording artist, has like a beautiful voice, is a beautiful character, portrays the character very well, and people were mad.
A Little Mermaid, I mean, isn't that so? That's Hans Christian Andersen, right? So if we really want to get picky about it, she should also be speaking German. Yeah,
she should be dead.
Some really harsh German too. And probably there's all sorts of terrible things that happen. I grew up with German stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, that probably explains a lot. I know. I read the originals. Yeah.
So resources I found online said, and I didn't check, but it said the original Ariel was supposed to have green skin in the first place.
Well, that would make sense because of the algae and stuff.
Does it? I keep seeing the argument. It was like, well, if she was in the ocean, then it would make more sense if she had fair skin. It's like, it doesn't matter. She's a mermaid. Mermaids don't exist, y'all.
So she's supposed to die.
She's supposed to die. She's supposed to, every step she takes should be stepping on 1,000 needles. She can't talk, and she doesn't fall in love, and she's supposed to fall into steam foam at the end.
Really?
After failing her task of getting the prince to fall in love with her.
Yeah.
She runs out of time, and she turns into sea foam and returns to...
This sounds way more interesting than the
It
actual
is.
Ariel.
Look, man, them original ones are way worse. Disney is really...
Didn't in the original Cinderella, the stepsisters cut off their toes to try to get
and got blinded by birds? And then in Sleeping Beauty, she did wake up, but that was because she was giving birth to twins after she had been assaulted by her father.
Okay, so
my first sexual assault thing that I read was a Hans Christian Andersen story.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really graphic. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I'll do it.
German. Yeah, I had my German fairy tales. I'm like, oh, okay.
Sorry, back to that,
yes.
Wasn't traditionally supposed to be any real color, but the original Disney production of it, she was depicted as white. So people were very upset with the fact that the real life version of this had been changed. White people were arguing that, well, what about my daughter's representation? She doesn't get to have a white Ariel anymore. Now she's confused, and that was a whole thing. But
and now she's confused.
Yeah,
I'm confused.
Mary Kearney, Associate Professor of Film, Television, and Theater at the University of Notre Dame, states, what's happening for a lot of white people in moments like this is that they're being forced to go through the kind of mental gymnastics that oppressed groups have long had to do, which is to map themselves onto characters that don't look like them, and it's uncomfortable, she said. But it's been uncomfortable for oppressed groups for a long time. So what are y'all's thoughts on this issue?
I just can't get over when you told me about Ariel maybe having a disability, and the only thing I thought about was a wheelchair. I'm like, how is she gonna...
Okay, that was a different thing. So,
okay.
So this is from a Barbie movie. I was babysitting last month, and so we are watching all the Barbie movies. And so one of the mermaids, they were doing a little mermaid battle to see who would be the guardian of the sea kind of deal. And so one of the girls had that
prosthetic.
Well, yeah, but everyone she was smaller than everyone. No one expected anything from her, and she was they're like, what's up with your tail? And then she was like, oh, my dad made me a prosthetic. And me, being a grown woman, proceeds to weep because it was just so nice and so sweet because you can just have these little moments for kids to be able to interact with people that are different than them, but not so different and equally capable as them. And it just, I was like, this would have been really nice as a kid,
well, that
because
to me
they did
was
have
interesting. See, the whole thing with I'm sorry that I interrupted. It's so rude, but the fact that we're even having a conversation anymore about the race of Ariel, a children's character. I mean, really, maybe we should talk about her boob size.
I mean, she is 15, 14, I think.
Yeah.
In the original source material. And source material being
But we don't
Disney.
want to acknowledge that because she gets married at the end of it.
Because I found what you told me so much more interesting. Because I was just like, oh, yeah. Because I've watched some kid shows now, and it's just amazing what... this is probably... People don't watch Teen Titans anymore, right? That's how I learned about mortgage interest rates and stuff. I've learned so much from Teen Titans as an adult. Yeah, I know. It's a bit scary, but I'm like, oh...
I'm going to need that episode.
Yeah. And they teach about currency. when
Financial literacy episode.
yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah, and it doesn't seem to be it's just like a lot of children's shows have been able to evolve until it becomes, I guess, a big screen production, and then we have these conversations. But
yeah, because like the Little Mermaid animated series that, like, you know, they make a movie, they try to make some money off of it afterwards. And so one of the episodes had a black mermaid and she was like deaf. And so they communicated through sign language. And I remember that episode because it was really cool to see that.
Bubble Guppies had a black mermaid as well. I don't know if you'll ever watch that.
Yeah.
But I just don't understand why they were so. I mean, I get it. It's racism. But it was just crazy to me to see so, like, even news, like, big time traditional news media picking up this story instead of just going, oh, this is just people being like ridiculous on social media. This was actually a discussion that was being had, like, traditional media. So like people like our grandparents and our parents, people who are not connected, were having these conversations about this, and I was just like,
not my grandparents, not my parents.
Well, I guess I was talking about Darcy and I's grandparents
because like I feel like it doesn't feel. It's going to blow over and it's going to make Disney a bunch of money, and regardless, it's going to be an okay movie. I am not super into the whole Disney live remakes thing. I wish they would come up with an original idea for once in their lives and make movies off of that and tell different stories instead of just trying to remake something so they can keep it in the Disney vault and not have it in the public domain. That's what's happening.
This was a discussion that I was having with Cole about this.
Cole count number 3.
Yeah, I know. But we were talking about this, and I was like, great. It's great that Ariel is getting. I honestly am glad that they casted a black character to play Ariel. I think it's good for representation's sake.
On top of that, her hair is still in locks. We're not dealing with the big fake wig that could have happened. I know that she probably had to fight for that too.
Probably.
But go ahead.
But I was just gonna say, like, Disney has so much money, and it's just, I'm glad that they're doing this, but also they have so much money, they have the ability to hire black producers and black writers to create a new character, a completely new character that maybe is actually telling a story of, I don't know, like, I have a friend named Princess who was actually adopted from an African tribe in Africa. Interesting enough, she goes by Shay now. But I'm just saying, like, being able, like, telling her story of being adopted from, like, an orphanage in Africa and coming to the U.S. and, like, having this name Princess and, like, you know what I mean? Like, there are, like, real life traditional stories that you could tell where you take real life people and make a really great film that could teach people a lot of things. And instead what Disney is doing is going, oh, well, let's make Ariel black, as if that's enough. And personally, I'm glad that she's black now. You have all the money in the world to do more, and they're not. And that's kind of the question. And, like,
I see what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of upset with, you know, the racists are going to say whatever. They're just going to But yeah, just the fact that too, that like, okay, look at us, pat us on the back now because we have a black mermaid. So we embrace diversity. Done.
And they did the same thing with Princess and the Frog as well, which takes us into the next section. Well, they made the same argument. Well, now we have a black princess, right? But she was only in the movie for about 40 minutes, and 17 of them were spent as her as a human. That's it. The rest of them, she was a frog.
Like frogs.
Right. But
frogs are lovely. However, like, if we're going to say, hey, this is your rep, and then your rep isn't even descriptively the rep that you were supposed to be, it's not. It's a lovely movie. I love the movie. It's great. However, it gets us into a briar pit of, like, what's good representation and how are we actually, what is this actually doing something? So, like, the big difference between, like, Ariel and Tiana is that in Ariel's story, it's not necessary that she's black. Like, she could literally be anything. She's a mermaid. Mermaids aren't adhered to our ideals and complexes of racial identity. But in Tiana's case, it's set in the 1920s in New Orleans. Her race matters for how she interacts with people and characters in the story. If you have a lot of people, mostly neckbeards, but, like, they're like, oh, well, if we make Tiana white, where has that my rep now? Like, no, because the story only makes sense if she is black.
Yeah, I was just thinking Little Mermaid now that you're saying that because it's just so outdated because the whole idea of, so she's got the patriarch, her father, is like, no, you can, he wanted her to marry a merman or something,
No,
right?
she just
No.
wanted, you're not supposed to go up to the surface. Be obedient
dangerous.
and don't go up there.
So she was a rebellious teen by those standards. So I'm saying, let's make a Little Mermaid. She got a tattoo. She
Yeah.
smokes. Maybe she uses a vape under. Yeah, she vapes with,
We do not
flounder.
condone smoking here at the Politics Hydra podcast.
No, it's bad.
No, it's bad.
But yeah, she has a little underwater vape, and her and Flounder are getting high. Yeah,
I'll
because
do
she's
it.
like, you can't tell me what to do, Dad.
Because like they tried to
Yeah.
do that with the Aladdin movie too. Because
Yeah.
like they added
Oh,
a
really?
whole. Honestly, with a lot of these live actions, instead of just making something new where they can get these messages out, they use the old stuff. Like in Aladdin, they gave her an extra song about being powerful and all that kind of stuff. Which great, sure, whatever. And then in what was the other one? Mulan. In the Mulan movie, they took out key characters and they took out like all the songs. There's no singing in Mulan. They took it like mad serious and were like, because like Mulan
In a
was
live
a
action
person, but like they're like, we're gonna be more respectful and stuff. But like, how respectful can you be if you're like colluding with the Chinese government during the time when they're
Darcy.
holding Muslims?
Right. I've actually.
You should do a children's podcast next.
A children's podcast.
Yes, we can tell stories. We can make them up.
Like talk about big
I love
topics.
stories.
I'm
No,
down.
she's saying
Yeah.
making stories for the kids.
I know, but
Yeah,
it would have to be
story time.
politically based. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Anti-racist
Politi-
baby.
A story contest. That sounds great. Okay, but where was I? Yeah, Disney's kind of like taking the stories and like trying to make them, I don't want to use woke, but like more politically correct. And it's kind of wrecking the stories a little bit.
Kind of, they're doing that. But like another example that we have here is the movie Soul, which is. Have you heard about Soul at all? So just you kind of have to know a little bit of the story, so I'll just give it to you. So we're following the story of a pianist named Joey Gardner, whose big dream is to become a big jazz musician. Now let me preface, I love this movie. It's one of my
I've never
favorite movies
seen it.
ever.
I couldn't do
It's
it.
so good. But he's, he wants to be a jazz musician, but he finally gets a big gig, and he's super excited, and then he falls down a sewer hole and dies. Like at the very beginning of
That
the
sounds
movie.
like my kind of movie.
Right. So it's funny, and so but then he finds himself as a disembodied soul in this place called the Great Beyond. And he really doesn't want to die, but to die you have to go to this next place, right? But in actuality, he ends up kind of taking a detour and gets a little bit lost, and he ends up in the place where souls, before they come to heaven, it's not heaven, before they come to earth. It's not really a religious thing, but it's just an idea of like souls being real or whatever. But before souls get put into human bodies on earth, they have to find something that they call a spark. What is that thing going to be for that person? Some people are pianists, some people love to cook, some people are good singers. In order to be a person, you have to have a spark. And his was being a pianist, right? And the point of the movie is basically where he is getting so caught up in trying to fulfill his spark of his dream that he forgets to live. And his whole life just becomes about becoming this successful pianist that he forgets to call his mom and talk to his family and smell the flowers and things like that. And it basically teaches people you can have a goal, you can have a dream, but don't forget about life is a gift, and there's all these other things that are going on as well, so take a minute and just enjoy life. I really like that.
It
Here's the
sounds
problem.
dumb, like I'm gonna cry.
Oh, yeah. Here's the problem with it. So he's a black character, right? And again, he's black in the beginning of the movie, and then he plays a disembodied blue character for the entire rest of the film until the very end, where he actually ends up coming back to life. Not like in a zombie thing. He didn't actually die, I guess. He kind of
Just putting the soul back.
He got his soul back, comes back to life, and he gets to go and do this gig.
Wait, what's wrong with him being blue?
Well, the problem is that we get
Pac-Man.
a black character.
I'm just thinking Lil Wayne lyrics all along.
Oh, goodness. Well, the problem is that you get a black character in a black community and a black culture, by the way, and then for the rest of the movie, he's a blue shapeless creature that has nothing to do with that identity. And so it's kind of like, okay, good job, Disney. Or it's actually Pixar, but they're the same now. But
Yeah. It's like making it, like you talked earlier about like just not getting, some people just not getting Get Out because it wasn't made for them. And so like I feel like turning black people into blue little globs and turning black people into frogs makes people able to
Globs and frogs.
globs and frogs. That's what this episode's
Yeah.
getting called. It presents an equal playing field. They're like, oh, I have a difficulty latching on to this black character, but I'm okay with a frog or an inanimate object. It's easier to be able to digest that way. It's easier to sell that way. Because if you sell a black movie, then they're like, oh, well, this is for y'all, not for us, and we're not going to watch it.
Yeah, you're right. Because I'm thinking about it, just, from a white perspective, I'm thinking like, yeah, oh, well, if you're blue, we're all the same.
Exactly.
That's what happens when you go to, yeah, I can see what
And
you're
that's what
saying.
they do throughout the movie.
Because that's
it's
my
kind of a
immediate
part.
reaction was like, blue, who cares, But,
It's kind of a
that makes-
colorblind thing. It's kind of like
Yeah.
looking at it and saying like, oh, well, we're all the same anyway, so we don't need to make accommodations for how you look and how you're treated
Yeah.
in the real world.
Moving into the representation of sexuality in movie and film. So specifically in the 1930s, we're known as like the golden era of Hollywood, right? Everyone was starting to watch movies. People had access to TVs, right? People were getting way more involved. And because of that came a lot of controversy because there were a lot of people watching films who had lots of opinions. And in light of said controversy, Hollywood Motion Picture Producers Association started to form a type of self-censorship that was to try to help combat some of these negative critiques that these films were getting. And this was referred to as the Hays Code. Between 1934 and 1968, the code prohibited profanity, suggestive nudity, graphic or realistic violence, sexual perversion, which is what we're going to talk about here, and rape.
Sorry, I was legit about to say like, oh, the fun stuff, and then you hit me with that last one, so thank
Yeah.
God.
However, the code allowed you to depict these in portion.
Girl?
However, the code allowed you to depict these inappropriate behaviors if they were
Portrayed negatively to the public.
Exactly. As you can probably guess, this did not do great things for the LGBTQ community. Specifically, queer characters who remained in the pictures were presented as a series of unflattering stereotypes, murderous villains, suicidal misfits, farcical fairies, or sexual rebels in the need of reform.
What?
I like farcical fairies.
Yeah, that's a good word. So an example. Any of y'all ever seen the Maltese Falcon?
No.
I hadn't seen it either, and I didn't watch it.
But it's the first time a German got an award of some sort, right? A German speaker got an award after World War II. That's about all I know.
Well, it was directed by John Huston. It's a classical detective story following a private investigator named Sam Spade as he searches for a jewel-encrusted stolen treasure. During his adventure, Sam meets a man named Joel who attempts to distract him and slow his search for the treasure. Now, this was based off a novel initially, and the character of Joel was outwardly gay in the story. But the problem is with the Hays Code, Huston, the director, couldn't actually depict that because it would be characterized as sexual perversion.
Okay. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but the Hays Code. What happens if I break it?
So what it was is that it was like getting like promotion. So at the beginning of the film, you would have a little like. Do you remember back when we used to do credits at the beginning of the movie?
Yeah.
Right. During that, right before you start, when you're showing like, oh, this movie is made by Lion Pictures or whatever, there's a little thing that pops up that said this movie is promoted by and supported by the Producers Association of whatever. And what basically that gave a sense of credibility to these films, and like you wouldn't get support from other producers and people within the filming community if you didn't have this kind of like, hey, it's like following, like, if I did a study right now and I didn't go through IRB and I didn't do all, like, follow all the ethics guidelines, that would be a problem, right? It's kind of the same idea.
Okay.
Yeah. And so they have this outwardly gay character that Huston now has to find a way to portray in media, but he has to do so in a way that relies on negative portrayal of this sexual perversion. Some examples of that is Caro, or Joel, is extremely feminine in his voice. So kind of playing into this like stereotypical idea of like gay men being feminine. So it's extremely high feminine voice. He's very feminine in his body language and his appearance. Like they demasculate him extremely, which in the book, from what I was reading, like online, he was just not that way. He was just a gay character, right? His sexuality was gay, and that's about it, right?
Yeah.
He also, in the film, Joel carries around a distinctive cane, and I wish I had a picture here for you, but he always has it. And in the film, he's often carrying it or like putting it in his mouth in a very phallic way.
Oh, who does that with a cane anyway?
So they were trying to, basically they couldn't keep the cane out of the character's mouth, and what they did is like they hypersexualized this character in a way where he no longer was just kind of this love interest. Now he was this like kind of like, it made him gross. Like if somebody nowadays was sticking stuff in his mouth and being phallic and gross, I would be uncomfortable, right? And that's what they did with this character.
Maybe
well,
you're just
a cane is for the ground. I mean, if it's if something
not
else.
That half, just
the other
top
half, the top half, yeah.
The clean half.
I mean, your hands still
Where
on
your hands
it, though.
go.
Yeah.
I don't know. It might be hot for some people because canes are pretty big, right?
Oh my god.
It depends on which one.
Is it a curly cane? Like
I'm imagining a short walking stick kind of deal.
So you're just like, I'm just trying to. I'm imagining a cane that has a loop.
No.
I'm imagining one with like a little, it has like a little falcon on it or something.
As somebody who's seen the picture, it's just a like normal sized walking cane that doesn't have a curve on it, but it has like a little section that you can kind of like put in your mouth and kind of like bite on. So it does have a little bit of a curve.
Is there anybody who does that at all? Like, is he the only character? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it was the times.
So the only thing I can think of is like there was this depiction of like investigators who like put pipes in their mouth and stuff like that, but it wasn't like that. I mean, he was doing it throughout the whole film. It wasn't like he was sitting there thinking
now
like,
I want to watch this.
What do I do? Maltese Falcon. And it was just like something they made him do in situations where he was uncomfortable, where it made the audience uncomfortable.
Huh.
Yeah.
We can show them, but only if they're
hypersexualized.
But wouldn't that
demasculated?
That's not very smart though, because like
it worked because other films of this time kind of followed that trope of like negatively portraying. It's why we see the stereotypes. Like I remember, even now, there's a stereotype of gay men being extremely feminine, and it's one of the like even in modern day TV shows we. Not as much anymore, I'd say, maybe in like extremely modern shows, but we're depicting gay men as extremely feminine or like having to be demasculated.
But that makes people more comfortable, I would argue.
I was about to say.
Yeah, because when like especially, I'm not saying homophobic people, but just people who are just that they have the stereotype in their head. So when they see, like I love Judy Garland. I don't know. I'm trying to think of whatever stereotype. And you see
Are
that
you
on
a friend
screen.
of Dorothy?
Friend of Dorothy. No singing.
That's
singing.
How you do that.
But yeah, I feel like it makes people more comfortable. And that's what a lot of movies have gone for is that, as soon as you have this, again, I forget what it's called. I keep forgetting where, you have this disassociation between your stereotype of what you expect from somebody and what they actually are doing. It's just
cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, exactly. So what you're saying is during Hays, right? Hays Code times that they actually wanted people to be uncomfortable. They wanted, whereas nowadays, yeah, I would argue that we don't want cognitive dissonance. People don't generally like that. They want their gay characters to look a certain way. And when I talk about I'm talking about the general audience.
I don't know. I think that I'm not sure if even the people back then really wanted that. I think maybe the white homophobic audience did, but I mean specifically there was controversy at the time. Like there were communities when this movie came out who were saying this is an awful depiction of this character, like what are you doing playing into stereotypes. And so I think maybe now it'd be a little I think the feminine stereotype that makes me uncomfortable. Like I don't like that because I think of
You think of me.
No, I just think of I know that, I mean, I've had, my best, I hate to do this, but my best friend in high school, my best friend in high school was a feminine gay male, like straight
Oh.
white, not straight, white male.
7
And
inconsistencies
we had
in that.
discussions about how like what that meant for him, because he did portray more femininely, right? But he was like in very masculine spaces in politics, and he said that stereotype was really harmful to him, and seeing the only stereotype on TV of gay men being extremely feminine men was harmful to him, because he thought that's kind of like that's the way it was. And so I think even today it's still harmful to think that it makes people more comfortable for them to be portrayed that way.
All right. Look, all right. In general, what we're currently occupying is the kind of like acceptable gay. So like the one that's non-threatening to kind of your perception of how gender and sexuality are supposed to line up. What you're getting a lot is trying to make these characters that are just like you and normal people, but just happen to be gay. It kind of removes a lot of people's experiences.
I think it's an interesting conversation to have. Hays Code now, it doesn't really apply. It's more like if you are a homophobic producer, you're going to portray people that way, and they are called out for those representations, like those depictions of sexuality. Or it's not like, hey, there's this association that says you cannot produce these movies in this way. But I mean, there is this like idea of what's generally acceptable, and that's kind of what we're talking about here, is like how has sexuality been depicted in film in a way that's more acceptable. But
I don't want to throw a wrench into all this, except yeah, I do.
Throw it.
It's been a while, so obviously I wasn't prepared. But I read a really good book a long time ago about how white gay males in particular have appropriated Black female culture. And that's where a lot of the, gay male voice and a lot of the mannerisms and, this kind of, because I think some people actually believe that you're born talking, forget that, a lot of it's what community you're in. Not all gay men are feminine. Not all gay men are whatever, but I forget the name of the book, but talked very specifically where this one stereotype came from and talked about it as being actually a form of cultural appropriation of African American women, strong African American women. I know.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, yeah. I think since you brought that up, I think that's kind of where I'm coming from with this, because like I'm thinking it from a Black male gay perspective, because like a lot of, I mean, the truth of the matter is that American, at least, gay culture is kind of derivative of Black culture, and we're making it and it's just dispersing its way out. And so I was kind of thinking of it in terms of how the demasculation of Black men is something that is being, I mean, yeah, we're going back to slavery. Anyway, so like the demasculation of Black men has really messed with ultimately our sense of moving out of the little boxes of gender and of responsibility that we've kind of been told to. And so like any step outside of that, even slightly in the feminine, is kind of like looked down on and like kind of to be avoided. And so I think that's mostly where I was coming from with that.
Yeah. And I guess I am seeing it from like, I don't know, I think bisexuality has a different, like I was kind of putting my own feelings on the issue in there instead of looking at it like from a more academic perspective, I guess. But like the term specifically bisexuality is kind of defined differently in media as well.
Yeah.
Like gay Black men is definitely an issue. I mean, look at how with the Jeffrey Dahmer show that's come out right now, people are talking about homosexual Black men a lot because a lot of people didn't understand that
it was a racial component to it.
There was a racial component to this, that he moved to a apartment in an African American area because he knew the police would not want to go out there and take these claims seriously. And specifically with gay Black men, you kind of like, police didn't care about Black men, but they also didn't care about gay men. So
Doubled
it's like,
up.
of course, if a gay Black man, I mean, the show, and I fact checked this, he escapes the house, finds the police, and then they bring him back to Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment to say, did this guy try to rape and kill you? Like, that's just, that's an issue as well. But like in terms of bisexuality, I think it's like completely like hypersexualized as well in media.
Yeah, especially on part of women, because it's always looked at as something for men to enjoy rather than being your actual sexuality that you've curated for yourself.
To me, that representation is completely external, I guess. That's why I felt like, I don't like this.
I think that would be a separate show altogether, though, just because in my research I found that biphobia, I mean, that is both internal to the LGBTQ community and external. Biphobia is, it's a real issue within queer communities as well as hetero communities. So that's, I mean, also bisexual identifying individuals, they experience higher levels of sexual violence. I mean, it's, that's a
can of worms.
Yeah.
Well,
I think it's, and I'm glad that conversations have moved beyond just looking at bisexuality as fetishizing, women, and actually how we see gender and how we see, sexuality. This idea that you're not actually what you say you are until you've had sex with someone, which is so gross. Right. I've tried messing with people and asking them if their 12-year-old child has, had sex with anybody yet. Because how else would they know, right? How else do you know?
My mom.
People don't like that. I know Darcy's face
Where
right
are we going?
Well, with bisexual, this is a question. And again, within a queer community, you hear the same kinds of questions being asked of people who identify as bisexual. It's just like, oh, well, or telling them, like, you can't be bisexual if you've only slept with a member of the opposite sex, which is a completely, air quotes there, a completely different conversation as well. Do you identify as bisexual or do you identify as queer? A lot of the people that I've talked to, and in the study that Dr. Kuhn-Magnan and I did, they talked a lot about code switching when it came to that. They're just like, in some communities, and we're talking about, queer and hetero, some communities, I would just make it easy for myself and just say I'm queer.
We have had a lot to talk about today. And so for the betterment of ourselves and for our listeners out there, we're going to cut this kind of short, and we're going to continue on the conversation on our Media Mayhem journey, essentially. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the kinds of representation we're seeing in films. We're going to talk about how criminal justice and how we perceive it on media is able to kind of alter our way of viewing the world and how we see our system. And then ultimately, we're going to talk about political actors and celebrities, and we're going to be able to talk about, whose hands are we putting the government in? And ultimately, we hope that you guys will stay around for the ride.
As we learn,
we hope you learn with us.
And just know, wherever we go, it's sure to be an adventure.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.